Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I am safe and sound in the lovely uh, primary compound today.
Zero children, zero dogs, all alone.
Here's the funny part. As much as I complain about the dogs, and
hmm
I complain endlessly about the dogs,
hmm
it's super weird not having to get up and check on them. Like I've literally walked into the front room to check on Sunny 3 times since I've gotten home, and I'm like, oh, she's not here. And then I'm like, oh, that's why there's no barking while I'm on a call. It's I guess you'd say I miss them, or I'm just used to them being around.
I could be done. Yeah, I'm done with the dogs. And it's anxiety provoking now, waking up just to see what new diarrhea stains, plural, are on the
Yeah,
carpet.
yeah, he's
More
really
than
putting the work out.
more than half the floor is non-carpeted, but he goes to the carpeted places and a different spot every single time, which is
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
He's really sending a message, I think, and it's hilarious because you're his favorite. So I don't know why he keeps angering you at 5 in the morning.
I know. And it's getting earlier and earlier. I go at 3 and then and you can see the trail. I think it starts with the P in one corner and then it's like a rainbow. And so he starts in one corner with P and then walks a little bit, drops a little bit of diarrhea, probably is like, oh no, I shouldn't do that. But then continues his arch. Oh, there's a little bit more. Oh, there's a huge dump. And then by the end, the other side of the rainbow at the other corner of the room is maybe a little bit more solid, maybe or maybe not. It's hit or miss. So he's literally got this rainbow progression that's just pee through to, anyways, it's
What's
disgusting. And I'm
hilarious is
done. I'm done.
if nobody heard that we were talking about dogs, they're listening to the worst parenting podcast in the world. Children just running wild, going wherever they want.
Speaking of children running wild, I have a parenting of the year moment last night.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did we do?
Okay. So, our children were watching a movie. Maya had a friend over.
I saw what movie you rented, by the way.
Okay. What?
Would it have something to do with a nun that looks super scary on the cover?
It's a horror movie. That's all I know. I don't know what they rented. Okay.
Yeah, they rented something called The Nun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, didn't know. I knew they were watching a rental or a horror movie. So Maya, 16, with her 17-year-old friend. We had another friend. I don't know. Is he 14? I think he's 14. And then Willow, who's 12. So she's the youngest. So the four of them watched this movie. I'm going to bed because today was a long day for me. Of course, I didn't get to bed until about 3 and then was up at 5, but that's a whole other issue. Part of the story probably has something to do with it. But
yes, okay.
Anyways, so they watched the movie. I'm in bed and I hear banging, 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 like frantic banging on our glass, like sliding glass door. And we're in the middle of the forest. Like it's pitch black. We're in the middle of the forest. But I'm like, they're just fooling around. There's 4 of them. I'm going to ignore it. Ignore it, ignore it. It's still frantic. I ignore it. And then I hear laughing. And then immediately, 30 seconds after the laugh, I have a 12-year-old in my bed bawling. So the older kids, she went out because to get water, you have to go outside of the cabin. And so she went out of the cabin onto the deck to fill up her cup for water. 17-year-olds thought it'd be funny to close the door and lock Willow out. Meanwhile, the other 2 teenagers walk around the side of the cabin. It's pitch black, so Willow cannot see anything around the side of the cabin to come up and scare her. Okay, so she comes in bawling and I'm like, they're jerks. She doesn't want me to call them out though, because like there's other friends. If it was just Maya, that would be one thing, but there's friends. She doesn't want to make a big deal. So anyways, the 2 girls take the 14-year-old. I tell them they have to drive him home because it's dark street, like up the road, this country road, to drop him at his cabin. So I decide to get them payback, and I had all the lights on and they had the lights on in the cabin. I turned everything off, turned the outside lights, the inside lights off, locked the door, the sliding door. I left the back door open. But anyways, they come up and they're screaming and banging. I didn't open it. I didn't open it. I'm just thinking though, like, back. But they were so terrified, these two girls. And they're like, there's somebody. It wasn't they were screaming, there's somebody out there. That Willow was actually like, Mom, you should probably go now. So these two girls are, they were very angry. Like, we get that what we did to Willow was wrong, but this was worse because there was nobody here. At least we were on the other side of the door with her, or whatever. And so,
awesome.
They had a hard time going to sleep last night. Yeah.
All three of them, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the older ones, you can just hear them because they're right in the next room banging. And so I kick the wall at one point, now it's like 3:30 and I kick the wall just because, what are you guys doing? Like, go to sleep. But Willow had fallen asleep and that scared her. She thought somebody was attacking her. So she had a whole big panic attack. Like, it was just a mess.
Like, so to put this into context, gentle listener, I would have been gone for less than 12 hours at this point. I left them alone for less than half a day, and it's Lord of the Flies in the forest is what's happening.
So, it is hilarious. I thought it was funny. It's funny because and it explains why our guest was asleep when Willow was texting me today. I'm like, why is she asleep at like 11 o'clock in the morning? That makes sense then. It is funny because they've done that before, right? Like, remember when Jesse, our friend, was trying to scare the girls and like run around the house and hit they love doing that stuff, especially because it's become kind of a routine where our place is the place that they're allowed to all hang out and watch these horror movies, because the youngers stay at our friend's cabin and kind of do their thing, and then the olders and our emotionally scarred 12-year-old get to watch the horror movies at our place. But then it becomes this weird competition of who can scare the other person first, right? And hey, I'm not gonna lie, that's precisely why we got this place, was for shenanigans like this. That's hilarious. Well, and I love it. When I do my anxiety workshops, I talk about all the parent traps. And my very first parent trap is a picture of me covered in blood. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes, but covered in blood, like the pranks that I like to pull, right? I like to scare. That's my prank, but that can create a lot of anxiety. So I certainly did that. And I mean, for the 17-year-old, she's terrified of scary movies. She is terrified. Last time we tried watching last summer she left and went with the adults to play games and left all the little kids watching a scary movie. Yeah. But she actually stayed to watch.
That's she's becoming desensitized to it.
Okay, we should probably get on with the show. So today, I'm very excited to introduce Donna Fields. She's a passionate educator from New York. She became a teacher in New Mexico and moved to Spain. Love it. I absolutely love it. She travels the world giving workshops and talks on how to give students more agency in their own learning, which we're going to talk about today. And the topic that we often talk about a lot, which is homework. So it'll be interesting to see what she has to say about homework. But she's looking at this agency in their learning so that we can have a future generation of empowered, confident professionals. Just a few fun facts. She lives in a tiny village in the mountains next to an abandoned house, which would be absolutely amazing. But the abandoned house, she actually dreams about turning it into a library for children of the village. It actually sounds like my dream. She wants to design it with little nooks that they can lie and read, lots of pillows everywhere, hammocks, different places where kiddos can forget about the outside world, and of course screens. Wouldn't that be amazing? And just exploring the adventures of stories that they're holding. And really her ultimate goal is to leave a legacy of a library and joyful transformational reading. So excited to have Donna here. Let's dig in.
Donna, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We're excited to have you here.
So excited to be here and to meet both of you online. I mean, I've listened to your podcast and I love the conversation and the rapport you both have and the conversation. So if I have anything of value for your listeners, I'm very happy to share.
Oh,
Awesome.
fantastic. I think this is going to be a hot topic for so many. Before we jump into the topic of homework, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am from New York originally. I grew up in the suburbs. I lived in Manhattan before I left Manhattan. I say that because once you live in Manhattan, it gets into your blood and it's very difficult to get it out. And life goes very fast. And 30 years later, I'm still moving on Manhattan time, but I moved to New Mexico, to Santa Fe, which I absolutely loved. The opposite of living in a city. I became a teacher there, found that I never expected to be a teacher. It wasn't the way that I grew up. Nobody expected that of us. It was very corporate. People were CEOs of companies and owners of banks and things like that. So it was very different, but love teaching. Absolutely love it. And then at some point I realized that I had a lot of immigrants from Mexico and the parents didn't speak English. And it was very important in Mexico to be parent and student friendly. And I don't think that we ever became officially bilingual, but almost. So I came to Spain to learn Spanish because it wasn't working just trying to study. And I thought just a month or so in Spain, I'd be ready to go back. And I really wanted to. And I'm here 20 plus years later. I'm very happy. So I still miss New Mexico, but Spain has a lot of things that are very satisfying. So I'm here now. And one thing I would like to say, and I think I told you both of this, I'm not a parent. I do not have children. I never wanted children, so it worked out really well. Don't have them, but I have a lot of students and I work with a lot of people. And for me, that's the dynamic is very comforting and is very constructive. So whatever I say will come out of a teacher's point of view and not a parent's, but I'm an aunt and I have a lot of neighbors with children. So it is experience in the end.
Yes, for sure. And I think that that's a great perspective because a lot of the listeners are parents and not teachers. And so having that perspective, I think, can be great. So let's jump in. Let's talk homework. I know that that's a hot topic and something that actually we've talked a lot about.
Right around the corner.
Maybe. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. But where do you want to start?
Well, that's a really good place. That's a really great question because my question is right back at you. Where would you like to start? And why do you think homework is such a hot topic?
I think it's a hot topic because, well, the struggle and I work with families all the time and there's always the struggle. It doesn't matter from young age all the way up to, I think, especially high school. It's how do I get my kid studying every day regularly so they're not cramming, not procrastinating, doing their homework, handing their things in, parents are always going into D2L or Power School or wherever they can check their kids' homework online. And then it's just a fight. So I think for me, just from the clinical side of things, I see that piece. As parents, we don't really, I think we come from it at a different angle. Just because, I find our relationship is more important than fighting over homework. And I'm not sure I see the value in homework, not before high school anyways. So that's the other piece as well. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I'd say we don't spend a lot of time trying to worry about getting them to do it. We're lucky that our kids do typically do it.
Probably because we don't fight about it.
Yeah, it's our great parenting. That's what it is. But I think realistically for me, what's important is understanding what the balance should be, right? Like what is the benefit of trying to put structured homework or study time in place or something we talked about before. So that's kind of where I'd be coming at it from.
Okay. And I love that because it's exactly where I would love to start. I think it's really important to think about the ideology behind homework. What you're saying is some really important concerns. Why do they need to do it? And especially before high school, why do they need to get grades on it? That sort of thing. So I would say the first thing as parents is think about the ideology. But let's take one more step back and let's talk about the term homework. Why in the world is it called homework? Why is it called work? We know that work usually has a negative connotation. When people say, what do you do? What was your work? I say, I'm a teacher trainer, but it's not work for me. I love doing it. I'm passionate about it. Homework, I don't think anyone could say that they're going to be passionate about it, but it's because of how I think it begins. Let's sit down. You have to do this. the parents are already stressed because they know that this argument is going to come. And so the atmosphere becomes stressful before you begin. So how can we approach it? I would say, again, ideology. Now, I just switched my screen. Can you still hear me? Sometimes.
Oh yeah, you're perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes with a Mac, it cuts me off. So I would say we need to think about the ideology, how we feel about homework and how we feel about life itself. Do you see homework as the important part of this process, or do you see learning as important? Do you think it's important that someone else is going to say you did something really well at home, or do you think it's important to help your students or your children feel that there's some internal value in what they're doing? I'm not going to give you any answers here. I'm just saying that we need to think about this, and it's going to be clear after a while then how you can approach it. And I have some suggestions for that as well. Do you think that if someone gives you something meaningless to do, that you have to do it? Or can you just look at it as discipline? Because discipline is very important. And as a teacher, I know which students at home don't have any discipline, and I know which do. Now, there are extremes, obviously. I'm from a home of extremes. My mother was incredibly authoritarian, not the best atmosphere. But I do appreciate a certain amount of discipline because that applies to everywhere in your life. You were saying sometimes it becomes very antagonistic, and you also said that you agree on it, which is very important for parents. If you're a single parent, it's not going to be a struggle to have someone to agree with. But if you're in a relationship, it's important to have an agreement. It's important to have a conversation away from the child or away from the children. I mean, Carolyn, you know this as a psychologist, right? Do you want your children to follow mandates from the classroom blindly, or do you want them to question authority? I think it's a very important question. I'm not saying reject authority. I'm saying question authority. And when I was in high school, I had a button that I'm sure was very unpopular, and it said question authority. I just think that we need to be critical thinkers and decide what we're being told and whether it's good for us or not. All right, a couple more questions, and please interrupt me whenever you want. But I think this is all about coming up with your own conclusions about what your child is being asked to do. And that way you can approach it in a calmer, more compassionate way, because you know what the goal is. You have a clear idea of the objectives. So just a couple more questions you can ask yourself. What are the goals of homework? What is the goal of the homework that your child is doing that day? Do you have a routine? Have you told your children when they're going to be doing homework, or have you co-created that routine? And, the last one is, do you want a positive home environment, or do you want an antagonistic one? I don't think many of us want antagonistic, but some of us have grown up in a home that is antagonistic, and we don't know anything differently. So I think the more we're clear about the ideology behind homework, then we can dive in and find some techniques. So what are your opinions about this?
Well, so many things have jumped out at me. First, I was thinking about relevance. And so often we talk about a learning gap, but I don't think there's ever a learning gap. It's a relevance gap. And so many kids, we hear, what's the point? Why am I learning this? Especially, when my daughter was learning quadratic equations when she was in grade 11, right? Why are we learning this? And so for me, it was about we're learning to learn, right? So that relevance gap, I think, is huge. And we've talked too about in earlier episodes, and now that we're coming into the school year, we've already talked with the girls about setting up sort of a homework time. I didn't call it that, but it's a learning time where all four of us are going to be coming home at a set time, and together we're using that half an hour to do whatever it is that we need to do, whether it's following up with some homework, studying, reviewing, or learning something that we want to deep dive into a little bit more. So it's kind of that learning time. And then we're going to debrief at the end of that time just to talk about what it is, so just to kind of instill that piece, that love of learning. I think I had a million other ideas as I was going. Those are the only ones I can remember. Anything jump out to you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was around the use of the question of authority piece, something that you're big on, and why you're learning. Like we've talked about it before, that it's not about simply absorbing information. It's about, to your point, the critical thinking behind it. Why am I learning this? Am I interested in learning it? How do I go into it? Because my experience was that as I came through my educational kind of path, I always struggled with being lectured to. I love learning. Like I go out and seek things out, and I if it interests me, I pour myself into it. But I struggled in the school structure because it wasn't set up for me in that way. It was, here's your lessons, here's what you got to do your homework, bring it back. And then there was a repercussion to not doing it. And I naturally rejected that. So for the kids, I want them to learn. I want them to want to understand it. And if they don't, I want them to explain why, and we'll figure out how to go through it, because I want my kids to be lifelong learners, not just simply graduates, right? Because that's the piece that I think is a lot of people forget about, is that they see these finite stages in education. I have friends that have gone through their post-secondary career, and the second they got their degree or their diploma, they've effectively stopped learning. They don't read, they don't seek out new things. And I don't want that, right? I think there's so much more that can happen and be taught and learned through your life, that's what we're trying to ingrain in the kids.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading a book.
How introspective you both are. Sorry, Carolyn, keep going. Keep going.
I was just going to say, I remember reading a book, and I can't remember the exact title, but it was something about how school has made our kids dumber because they are just spoon fed, and it's just drilled down their throat, and they're not allowed to think for themselves or question things. It's just do this, do this, do this. You don't do this, slap on the hand, and wait, like they're just not learning. So just to add to that,
and the kids, our kids have responded to those teachers that are engaging, right? When they don't feel that there's a lesson behind it, that they come back and they can't wait to tell us about class and how the teacher showed it to them and what they got to do, and they don't realize that it was a structured lesson with a purpose. And then the flip side of it is the amount of times we had to come home and complain about, well, I got in trouble because I didn't understand this, or I asked a question, they said I should have known it already. And you can see the light dimming in their interest on that topic or with that teacher. So for us, it's really important to make sure that they're wanting to be active participants in the active learning.
There's so much there. There's so much that I want to respond to. Hopefully I'm going to remember everything. One of it is how introspective you both are and how you've thought about this whole process and the fact that you want your children to like to learn. I too love learning, which is one reason I guess I'm a teacher. I can continue learning, but I realize not everyone does like to learn. They're born that way somehow. They don't like learning. Somehow they find an interest. And in that interest, they need discipline. And so I go back to that question. We're not getting into it yet, but instead of homework, think of it as, just something sustainable, something that you need to start and finish, because when you do find your interest, you need that discipline to be able to start something and finish it. We're talking about people who become computer programmers or, want to make video games, anything that isn't necessarily in the academic world or isn't in the mainstream professional world. It's still going to help them be able to learn to sit down at a certain time and start and finish. And one of the things I was going to suggest, which you already said you're going to be doing, is modeling. Modeling is a routine. You're going to sit down with them. And how old are your children?
16 and 12.
Okay. So it's not as if you may be helping them to do the homework. You may be, but I think what's more important is that you sit down and do your work with them, and that they see that there's one time a day, every single day, that you are going to be there. You're there to connect with them. You're not sending them off to their room and saying, half an hour, I won't see you until you finish your homework. You're using it as a time to connect. And I think in this world, we really, really need to do that very deliberately. I think another addition is for everyone to turn off their cell phones, not message anyone. You probably need to work on your computers, but perhaps for that half hour, you won't be doing anything live with anyone, that your emotions, your children are going to feel that you are there emotionally. And I think that's priceless. So again, What is homework? Is it only to complete something that they're told to do in school? Or is this an opportunity for a family, for parents to really connect to their children and pass on the importance of a certain amount of discipline, the real importance of routine? Everybody responds to routine. Even people who say they don't, they do respond to it, as long as it's not military. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the military, but as long as there's a little bit of freedom. There's also the concept of homework in itself. And when I was a teacher, I believed in homework. I was given homework when I was growing up. I gave homework as a teacher. I thought that's what was really important to do. The more I read studies about it, the more I'm convinced that we really ought not give homework. When are the kids going to be doing homework? When they're tired, when they're hungry, when they're about to go to bed. There's no really great time to do homework. If the teacher insists on it, we're going to have to find ways, and those are the strategies we're going to talk about. But otherwise, there's studies. I don't know if you're familiar with a researcher named John Hattie. He's one of the big names in the educational world right now, and he's studied all the best practices in education for the past 20 years. And when he says something is effective practice in the classroom, most people believe him. What he says about homework, it is one of the least effective practices. And that's when I really took a step back and I thought, holy cow, then I've been doing something ineffective all these years. Now, there's a caveat to that. If you're sending work home with a student that they don't know how to do, it's absolutely useless. It means that you're asking the parents, if they're available and if they know the topic, to help. I actually believe in giving the answers to homework if I'm going to send it home now. I think that I'm trying, what you were saying, both of you, is helping the children become responsible for their own learning, giving them agency. If I give them problems, let's just say it's a math problem. I give them a series of math problems to take home because I've already taught them the concept, and I want them to just do a little bit of rote work so that it gets in their brains. Some things we need to memorize, not everything. I also am going to give them the answers. Because if I don't get to first of all, correcting homework is a waste of time in class. But if I don't give them the answer, so they don't get it, when they need the answer is when they're doing it. I mean, when I was at home trying to do math problems, I needed the answer there because what I said, if I didn't get it correct, then I wanted to know why. And I really sat there and thought about it. And I think that if we help students and our children get into that routine, I really believe they'll do it. So that's one part. But Hattie says it's the least effective if you're giving them something new. If you're giving it to practice, it's a little better. So the experts also say that homework is not one of our best practices in education.
I think we saw that with one of our, I think it was when Maya was middle school. There was a policy that most teachers would give them time, or they would allocate part of each class to complete what would be homework, right? So that here's your learning portion, and they would structure the learning module so that they could work on it when they could ask for help, right? They could make sure that it was done, and then they learned to manage their time, right? Because it was on them to understand that if they didn't complete it, the expectation was still that the work was being done, but they're given the opportunity and the resources to do it at school, so it wasn't spilling over to their personal life, right?
Mm-hmm. That's one option. Yeah, it's definitely an option. I mean, I really believe that the class time, we need to have activities. We need to have a lot of collaboration. We need to have students talking to each other, looking each other in the eye. Most of my work is online, and I don't believe in technology in the classroom. So if they can structure the day so that there is one determined time in another classroom, homework or whatever, what do they call it now? Study time, where there is someone who can help them, wonderful. But I mean, I encourage teachers to have activities in the class and to do any rote work by themselves after they get explanation. So we're saying pretty much the same thing. Mm-hmm. They need help. Mm-hmm. All right. Where would you like to go now? What else? Where should we talk about some strategies?
I'd love that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, one of the things, you've already said, is modeling it. I think that they need to be modeled. I think that also, and I don't know how you relate to your children, I would assume that it's with positive discipline, but positive discipline for me in the classroom and at home is vital. I did not grow up with positive discipline. I had to learn it. When I had a mother who yelled, and that's what I thought everyone did. So I began teaching. I think the first 3 years I was yelling at my kids. It wasn't that I hated them. It's just that's what I thought you did when you didn't like their behavior. And now I understand that it's not, you may not like the behavior, but you always need to be respectful. And we need to model respect if we want our kids and our students to learn that acting in a respectful way is only going to be positive for everybody. I mean, we're living in the fourth industrial revolution for our students, which means that technology is taking over so much of the work that the maybe lower level academic students used to do. Now they have a lot more options, but technology is taking over a huge bite of the professional world. What does that mean? That means for us, we need to make sure that our students have skills that are different than what technology can do. And most of that is having critical thinking skills, having a little bit of discipline so that they, again, start and finish something. But we need to model positive discipline as well. So we don't want to say, you have to do this now. We don't want to create this aura of obligation over homework. What do? Co-creation, I think, is one of the keys. When you have decisions at home, how do you deal with it in a more co-creative way? Or do you both say, this is what we both decided, and this is what we're all going to do, which I doubt.
No, do you know Ross Green, his collaborative? Okay, so he's an educator and he's created, it was collaborative problem solving, but now I think it's collaborative proactive solutions. But that's what we do. We have family meetings where we brainstorm different ideas on how to solve problems. So definitely that co-creation, collaboration piece.
Yeah, I love that. Family meetings is so important. And I did a lot of work with an academy with preschoolers, and you can have family meetings with preschoolers. All you need to do is believe that they are going to give you the information that you want and believe that they're going to respond to you. And doesn't even matter how they respond to you. If you bring up a suggestion and say, let's talk about homework time. When do we think the best time in the afternoon is to do it? They might say, never. And you'll say, oh, that's very interesting. If we never do homework, then what's going to happen? And just go through the steps of the consequences of what's going to happen if you never do homework. You might say, all right, let's talk about doing it for 5 minutes. And then you get up and stretch, which is an amazing technique. Let them work for 5 minutes. Let them learn for 5 minutes. Let's rephrase this. Get up and stretch if they need to. Get the blood going in their brain, sit down again. 5 minutes later, let them get up and stretch again. I'm not sure if you've ever heard the kind of mathematical calculation that no matter how old you are, you can only sit for double that amount of time. So if you're 3 years old, you should never be sitting for more than 6 minutes. 4 years old, 8 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, yeah. Wonderful. I'm sure that you would know this. And we need to honor that. I've talked to teachers and they said, we haven't exactly gone double. In other words, we haven't let them stand up every 6 minutes or 8 minutes or 10 minutes, but every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. And they said there's an incredible change doing that. So I think with this whole dynamic of doing work at home, during learning at home, we can say, there's absolutely nothing wrong with standing while you're doing this, while you're reading. There's absolutely nothing wrong with lying on the floor while you're doing that math problem. There's absolutely nothing wrong with walking around the table. I mean, what is the big deal if I had some students that would stand in the back of the classroom and walk back and forth, and they were reading or they were filling out fractions, whatever. They needed to move. I have no problem with that as long as they were on task. So those are some of the things. And co-creating. Family meetings are really important. And I'd love to pass on for you for notes, if you don't have them, just some suggestions for family meetings, unless we have time to go over them. I'm not sure how much time we have.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anything that would be helpful in, getting families successful with doing this would be great.
Well, the other thing you can do is you can have columns. You can, again, to give the student agency, and it works for younger students, younger children, it works for older students. You can have charts on your refrigerator. I'm not sure if the refrigerator is the best place because then all I think of is food, but somewhere in the house where they can write down what the homework is, if they've finished it, their thoughts on it, And you can write down, oh, it's just so wonderful that you finished that, or it's so wonderful that you did 5 paragraphs of that essay. I'm looking forward to reading it when you get a chance to give it to me. Something where it says what they need to do, what they've done, how they felt about doing it, and how you respond to their work. So that's another easy way to do that gets the connection going between all of you so that you don't feel so isolated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a great idea.
Opinions. Yeah. All right. Some more?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I, in my work, do something called scaffolding techniques. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. Some people hate the term scaffolding. Scaffolding techniques are basically fun ways of transitioning into information. So you can, again, in the routine from the youngest age, you both know that children respond really well to routines. When it's time to start learning at home, to finishing tasks, you can put a song on, you can do a little dance, you can tell a joke, you can play a little game that gets them thinking critically to sort of turn on their minds. So I believe in scaffolding techniques. If the teacher doesn't do it in school, do it at home. But if we can create an atmosphere where the learning at home with the homework is not onerous, but rather a time to connect and a time to transition and a time to learn about challenges being positive, then we're doing pretty well. After they do it, then again, the reflection and what you were saying in your family meetings, you've already decided that you're going to do some sort of debriefing at the end, which to me is reflection. And reflection is so important for all of us. Our students need us to paraphrase back, to mirror back what they've said. And then they feel more involved. They feel that what they've been doing is valuable. And you can say, oh, I remember doing that, or I did, someone was talking about that at work, some way, so that what they're doing in the classroom has some connection to the real world as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing that I would strongly suggest when we're going to have resistance. Some of our children are going to be resistant. And if we haven't been doing this since the time they were very young, then it's starting something new. It's a routine that's going to be, it may be complicated. So what do we do when our children say, I'm not going to do it, or they don't do it well? For me, it's worse when they do it and don't do it well than if they haven't done it at all. So I'm a big believer in high expectations. And high expectations to me is simply expecting the best out of them. But it's giving them the time, but it's also giving them the expectation that if they just do 100 problems and get 99 of them wrong, it's not acceptable. But it's not acceptable to you. It needs to be not acceptable to them. So how do we make that big point? Again, and we're talking about whether we want our children to be motivated by external evaluations or by internal ones. And ideally, hopefully, everyone's going to say, no, I want them to have internal evaluations and assessments. It's something we need to develop. It's something they need to really help them with. So they do something that's below par. They do something that we know they can do better. Well, we don't want to say to them, I know you can do better, because that's giving them external evaluations. What we want to do is say, is that your best? Do you think that you could do better? Do you think? I know at work, I handed in something to my supervisor, and I knew in my heart that I could have presented a little more professionally. I knew in my heart that I hadn't taken the time I need. And this is what happened to me at work. Just a story. Let them make the connection. I think, again, if we can share our lives outside of the classroom and the consequences of the decisions we take, hopefully, little by little, they're going to imbibe it, because most of them are not going to stay in the academic world. What we're doing in the classroom needs to be translated into the professional world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're both thinking about this, right?
Yeah. And that's what I do. I mean, I'm the parent who drops the seeds, right? So I'm not telling them you must do this and don't do this. And it's planting seeds of, oh, this kiddo that I worked with, this is what happened.
usually I'm just making stuff up, right? Just to kind of get the lesson that they're going to be learning, or for myself, exactly that this is what happened. I'm always cautious around the best if you've got a perfectionist kiddo, because sometimes their best is never enough. I would just throw that disclaimer in there. If you've got a kiddo who is a perfectionist, I'm careful with the words that we use. But we focus so much on effort, right? The effort that we put in. And so that's the piece. If we're just half-assing it and do, crappy output, that's very different than if we actually are putting in our effort. I'm not going to get on their case if it's not the best. It's just at their capacity. I saw them put in that effort. So I guess they're best at that time. It's the effort.
That's always been a big focus for us is the result isn't what we're focused on. It's their attempt to do their best, right? And try and focus it, because the result is a finite thing that they're going to move past, right? Great, you got 90% on that test. That doesn't matter because there's another test coming, right? So how do you make sure that they're focused more on, did I understand it? Did I learn it? Am I feeling prepared? Did I ask for help? All the things that kind of they can control.
I think that's really important. I had a real problem with giving grades. I was fortunate enough to work in a charter school when I first became a teacher, and we didn't give grades. We gave portfolios, which was an enormous amount of work, but we didn't give grades. I object to the fact that you're going to give a student an A in the beginning of the year and an F to another student in the beginning of the year. So if that student with the F learns it by the end of the year, isn't that valuable? So grades itself are objectionable. I mean, we need to, again, question what they're doing. And what you were mentioning is grades before high school. I mean, you need grades for the college. If they're going to college, to university, then they need to show something. But before then, for goodness sake, it needs to be a little more liberal. And it's about questioning what they're doing. So you were talking about effort, which is very viable. It's very valuable. What one child can do at 9, another child can't do until they're 12. And so who says there's a wrong or the right? We all develop differently. And maybe that child who can't, who knows, read a book at 9, but is an incredible athlete or incredible artist, that's where they need the praise, not rewards. This is another thing we need to talk about, rewards for homework. I don't know how you feel about it, but my parents did not give us money or rewards to finish something that we needed to do anyway. And when I hear parents sort of with pride say, yes, I gave them $5 because they finished their homework, I think, I don't think it's about money. It's about teaching them to be proud of the effort that they've put into their work. And that's going to last them a lot longer. There was this great story a parent told me. He was so proud of his child because they would say, you're going to get certain points if you do this, and you're going to get more points if you do that. And they were very proud because their children would do everything because they were earning points. And the points I've forgotten what the points actually went to, but it was probably some, more time watching TV, which is not very valuable, or, going to an amusement park, who knows. But the problem was when they went out to dinner with their children, and they were very proud. They thought, well, they behave at the table, so they're going to behave at the table in a restaurant also. And the child picked up a glass and said, how many points do I get if I don't break this? And Mary said, okay, wait, something's wrong here. Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
Children are smart.
The wrong lesson for sure. Yeah.
They are. Yeah. So it goes back to creating that atmosphere, right? That environment of wanting to, right? And I think that comes from our positive energy and setting things up as fun and collaborative, and we're all doing it together. I think that's all important.
Yeah, there's another thing. I think that might be, sorry, Andrew, you just reminded me, Carolyn, is something else that parents can do. And it's so easy for younger or older students to have an emotion wheel on the table when everyone's sitting down together, because a lot of children need to express their emotions. And so you can say for the first 10 minutes, where are you on the emotion wheel? And if they're really angry, you just accept it, you just acknowledge it. But if we let the children identify their emotions, they are going to feel a little more validated and a little more in control. It's just another way of letting them participate. Andrew, I'm sorry, what were you going to say? Yeah.
I was just going to ask, with the start of school right around the corner for us, and from a teacher's perspective, it'd be really valuable to understand, what do you feel that the parents and the teachers can do to initiate some, I guess, a cohesive approach early in the school year, right? Because I think especially if you find you've got a teacher that has a different approach, how would you kind of recommend or suggest parents kind of approach that to make sure that they're either aligned or they adjust to make sure that they fill in the gaps they feel are there, or just basically work as a team?
Wow, what an important question. What an important question. I mean, again, if we go back to the John Hattie research, he says that the best practice out of almost 3,000 that we could do in the classroom is work with the parents, for the administrators, teachers, and parents to work together. And if everyone's on the same page, the children will feel it. So what you're saying is, how do we begin the year that way? The easy answer is you sit down and have a meeting. That's the easy answer. It becomes complicated when we know there's so many personalities. If there are 15 people in the room, there are 15 personalities and 15 agendas, and we know that it usually is 100 or 200 people in the room. The teacher usually has the best intentions. And I will say that there are stereotypes. There are teachers that are into teaching for their own reasons and maybe not so beneficial. There are those. The people I know are really dedicated teachers. So I would say, if someone like me, someone I know, goes into a meeting, I would be cautious, because I know how emotional, I know that the parents want the best for their children. Sometimes they don't know how to express that, and it can get loud. Sometimes the meetings get loud. You both know that, right? Mm-hmm. Teachers are very often overworked. Teachers are very often not trained in knowing how to create a positive conversation with parents. So although you may think that we're trained in that, we are not. It all depends on the person. And I'm doing this. I did a chat with this fascinating teacher in California who's doing her dissertation on socio-emotional training for teachers. Teachers need to be deliberately trained in knowing what to expect, how to deal with their own emotions, so that they can be more constructive when talking with their students and the parents. So this is a really long way of saying what an important thing to do. And you need to have really specific training. I would say that the teacher, or there needs to be an administrator there, or there needs to be a facilitator, someone like Carolyn, for instance, who can go in and facilitate the meeting, because emotions get high. The teacher has a lot of pressure from administrators of how much he or she needs to do by the end of the year. The parents want to make sure that their child or their children are being taken care of cognitively and emotionally. And we don't always know how to express that so that someone else is listening to us. And that's why Carolyn has a lot of work. And that's why teachers can get a little lost very easily. And when I was first a teacher, I had no idea how to talk to parents. I really didn't. I thought that we were all on the same boat and we're all supporting each other. And unfortunately, that's the intention, but not the reality. So what can you do? I would say what I used to do is have an agenda, send newsletters home so that parents knew. I had constant communication with the parents. And I would tell them what our agenda was, what we've done. I would give them examples. In the States, the parents can come into the classroom. There's no problem with that. I'm not sure how it is in Canada. I'm in Spain. Parents are not allowed in the classroom, which is very, very different for me. So they talk very infrequently. In Canada, do the parents have full access to the teacher and to the classroom?
COVID, I think, has changed quite a bit. We always have been able to, but now I just find there is a lot more red tape. Just, talking about, even as a psychologist, getting into a classroom can be tricky if I'm going to do an assessment with the kiddo, for example. So it's getting a little bit trickier, but I'm sure, the ways in are through volunteering in the classroom, helping out that way. There's always parent-teacher interviews. Their teachers are always open to phone calls, meetings.
those types of things, but going into the classroom might be a little trickier.
All right. And we're not talking about going to the classroom anyway. I think what Andrew is saying is having a parent-teacher meeting, right? And how do we establish sort of an understanding in the get-go? And I think it's a really important thing if we can do it. I would suggest that parents give the teachers some ideas of what's important to you beforehand so the teacher can think about it. I would say that the teacher needs to have an agenda and send it to the parents beforehand so that at least written, there's an understanding of what's going to be talked about and what needs to be negotiated. Again, a facilitator is really important because then you don't get bogged down in personalities or the inability to know how to express yourself. But if you have a question about homework, I think teachers also really need to think about why, what they're giving, and if it's appropriate. And it's not a big conversation yet. It needs to be, and it's not yet. Mm-hmm. So if you go in there and you both are incredibly respectful, and if you say, I would really love to talk about the necessity of homework, is that possible? Or maybe in the next meeting, could we talk about it? You're giving the teacher the opportunity to think, all right, then let me get prepared, or I'm ready now, let's talk about it. But I would really recommend sending messages. People are less threatened by messages first. I believe in talking, but first giving a little bit of information beforehand so the other person can be prepared. You both know very well that when we get defensive, we don't act as our highest, best selves. And what we really want to do is have a connection, a heart connection in the end. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think on my other podcast, I have a whole episode on this as well, just kind of how we go in and be respectful and, respecting teachers' authority, but also how do we bring up our own kiddos' needs and things like that. So just being mindful of the time, it goes by so fast. Any other last minute, really important things that parents should know or think about when it comes to homework?
I think in the end, it's really about just being respectful. I think it's really getting very clear about what you want, getting very clear about what you think the concept of homework is. If you want them to complete whatever it is that they've gotten from school, or simply find a way to enjoy the practice of learning at home, of finding a way to connect to your children while they do it. I think it's about self-reflection first. And then from that, what evolves is how you're going to approach it with your child. And once you get clear about it and get clear about it with your partner, if you have a partner, I think things will get a lot easier. Not perfect. We don't live in an ideal world yet, but it will get a lot easier once we have clarity.
Perfect. And yeah, I think knowing what the goal is ourselves as parents is important, because that comes back to your earlier point about, I see it all the time where parents are nagging, sit up, hold your paper closer to you, use both hands, right? And so your earlier point about let them walk around, if that's just think of your one goal, it's for them to engage in this learning process. Forget about how they're sitting or, that's important. But I think this discussion, just what you were talking about, this last little piece about the purpose of homework and all of those things, I think that's a great conversation to have with our kids as we're sitting down. Okay, it looks like you're working on math. What's the purpose of doing this? And I think talking that through with the kiddos is so valuable just to get their buy-in as well.
Yeah. And if you would allow me, there's something you just reminded me that Andrew was saying before about doing trigonometry or doing calculus. I mean, I never used that in my real life. If I had studied it more, maybe I would have. But the point is that you were opening tracks in the mind. And I think that's another reason why liberal arts at the university level is so important, because maybe most of that information, listen, what I tell teachers all the time is whether you want to realize this or not, the information that you're teaching, probably they won't remember. The way you're teaching it, absolutely, they're going to remember. And that's what they're going to take inside of them. So yeah, a lot of the homework that they're sent home may never reach their professional lives, but they will have more diverse thinking because of it. And that can be part of the discussion.
Yeah. And the process, and even of, I love the emotions wheel. I'm always talking about we need to teach emotion regulation and having that emotions wheel right there, dropping into the body. Where are we feeling it? But incorporating that here, if we're given in work, we are given tasks that we hate doing. Inevitably, we might love everything that we do, but if there's an administrative task, right? So how do we sit down, even if we're feeling frustrated, even if we're feeling tired, just to your earlier point of how do we get started on that anyways and finish it to completion? So maybe that's the skill. It's not about finishing the quadratic equations. It's about that. So it's those learning to learn and learning to work through those things. So I love it. I love it all. Any last
No,
minute?
this is great.
Okay.
This is really great structure, and I appreciate kind of the insight and in the framework that we can kind of work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah,
Wonderful.
I mean, there's so much more. Another time we'll go into more of the positive discipline, because when you're talking about nagging, that's one thing we don't want to do. We want to help them have more agency in doing it. And with the emotions, we want them to know how to verbalize it. It's much better. It's fine if you're angry. It's not fine if you scream, and if you can just say, I'm angry right now, or I'm frustrated right now, or I'm feeling happy right now. As long as we help them verbalize things, we are creating little citizens that are going to be able to function really more fluidly on a global level. And I think that's what we want.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I think it'd be great to talk about positive.
We got a second conversation coming soon.
Yeah.
yeah. But just, I love this. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about this, because I really value both of your opinions. And I'd love to hear how the listeners respond to this and see if it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thanks for
coming on to the show. For having. Yeah. It's great. It's great having you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you both. It's been wonderful.